Recently, Nintendo announced that Xenoblade Chronicles X would be coming to the Switch. As someone who dumped way too much time into the Wii U game, I'm thrilled to experience it again with a boosted resolution and hopefully a larger online player base. What I'm less thrilled about are the amount of posts claiming that this port means there's no longer a reason to own a Wii U. Beyond ignoring the fact that the Wii U still has a ton of exclusives and some solid backwards compatibility, statements like that also assume the Wii U's most unique feature, the gamepad, adds no value to gameplay. That's particularly odd when referring to a game like Xenoblade Chronicles X. Throughout my playthroughs, playing the game on a single screen felt limiting at best. Having full access to glance at the game's expansive map as I'm dashing toward a specific location has felt much more seamless than most adventure games, which I might need to pause the game every so often to orient myself. Likewise, controlling the web of resource nodes with a stylus feels so much better than an alternative like cycling through the selections with a controller. And that's without even getting into the social features added by the built-in keyboard. In a game that could easily take 70 to 100 hours to do everything in a single-player experience, it's the little things that matter most, you know? Even still, it's hard to blame folks for overlooking the utility baked into the Wii U's key feature. Over a decade after launch, far too many folks still haven't had a chance to use one for themselves and rely on the word of others who still claim it's a gimmick that provides little to no value. But, well, here's the thing. That's always been a bad take. Similar to the reception of DS and 3DS touchscreen usage, far too many folks see anything short of gameplay mandating touchscreen interaction as not utilizing it, and then complain further when games use touchscreens too much. It's a bit odd, because the truth is that dual-screen gaming has been best when the touchscreen gets out of its own way and makes the full gameplay experience more comfortable or accessible, like with Xenoblade Chronicles X. So, for the sake of folks out there still viewing the gamepad as a gimmick, let's take a moment to check out the range with which the gamepad was used, what it meant for gameplay, and how that usage impacts how well games can and have been ported elsewhere. First up, let's take a look at some games that actually didn't use the gamepad at all during gameplay. From my experience, this was exceptionally rare, and mostly came from using the Wii U to play Wii games. Though, even then, the gamepad's still useful because it offers a solid portable display with a built-in sensor bar for Wii remotes. You know, again, small touches, but one that's come in handy for me on multiple occasions. With that being said, there are a couple larger first-party Wii U games that decided to opt out of the gamepad entirely. Namely, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Breath of the Wild is a bit of an oddity. With its long development, what was initially meant to launch exclusively on Wii U turned into a Switch launch title. In 2017, director Hidemaru Fujibayashi told IGN that their team initially created features for the gamepad but removed them after transitioning to Switch development. After testing, they also felt opting out of the gamepad features offered stronger gameplay experiences for their needs. Which, hey, fair enough. Artistic intent is always important in my book. Though it is clear from playing the game how the gamepad could have been used to streamline menus and maps, like we'll see with later examples. In its final state, the only real use for the gamepad is to tap it for off-TV play, another feature that newer technology has made less relevant. What's an even bigger oddity is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Instead of being a weird between-generation development case, it's a game that launched midway through the Wii U's lifecycle and completely omits functionality for anything other than off-TV play. The oddity here isn't that Retro didn't shoehorn some random touchscreen feature into gameplay, but that they kept the display completely blank, even during multiplayer. No gamepad usage does mean that there's no real use coming back to these versions of the games over their Switch ports. But they're really the exception rather than the rule. At minimum, most Wii U games mirror the TV view. This technique was often used for games intended to be a single-screen experience, or for smaller titles that only required a touchscreen. For single-player experiences, this might seem like overkill to most people, but there are at least a couple reasons why it was actually important. The first is accessibility. Anecdotally, I've had multiple folks tell me that having a second display in front of them has helped with reading text or completing certain tasks while still wanting to play on their much larger TV. Not to mention, because the tablet mirrors video and audio in most of these cases, the integrated headphone jack makes it extremely easy to mute the TV I'm playing on and get full audio from my controller. A lot of controllers these days do have that feature, but it's not guaranteed, especially with Nintendo. The second bonus is for multiplayer. With a big enough TV, it's easy to comfortably cram everyone onto a single view. However, if you have enough folks playing, someone's bound to have a bad angle to see the TV. Likewise, if someone wanted to use a smaller, perhaps portable, monitor for multiplayer, giving each person their own display helps things feel a bit less cramped. That's further emphasized by games like Pokken Tournament, which placed a different perspective on each display for local battles. It's an overall more comfortable setup than the Switch port, which requires either a split screen or some awkward camera centering. If it weren't for much of the game's DLC skipping the Wii U, I'd probably say this would be better than the Switch version for local matches, to be honest. After all, the Wii U's main focus is social gameplay. Miiverse posting is packed into nearly every game, and plenty of games go out of their way to make multiplayer possible. Unlike most other consoles, the existence of a second screen meant that multiple folks could play on the same device while having sometimes different or asynchronous experiences. Now, for an example of an asynchronous experience, look no further than New Super Mario Bros. U. During single-player runs, the gamepad mirrors the TV. However, add a second player, and now the gamepad works as a tool to alter player 2's course. As my wife runs through levels, I can add blocks to help, or hinder, her progress, create platforms to reach new areas, or even tap enemies to stall them. Back in undergrad, I had a blast messing around with this feature with my roommate, and honestly, it's still a fantastic way to play with someone who's less confident in their gaming skills, or just to have a good time messing around. Rayman Legends took this a step further by making that style of gameplay the entire game. In single player, the game starts out kinda like a Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, where the player needs to use the touchscreen to clear obstacles for a computer-controlled character. Add a second player into the mix, and now the character's human-controlled, and both of y'all need to work together to reach the end of the level. As much time as I've spent playing the PS4 version of this game, where clearing obstacles is delegated to a button press, booting it up on Wii U feels like a completely different gameplay experience that couldn't be replicated anywhere else on a single device. And honestly, that feeling is common with a lot of non-exclusive Wii U titles. There's usually just enough extra features added where I really need to ask myself how much different an experience I'm having by not playing on the Wii U. For games like New Super Mario Bros. U and Rayman Legends, that even boils down to those games feeling like entirely different games on other platforms. But hey, I know some of y'all don't really care about local multiplayer experiences, so all of this probably doesn't hit as hard. Well, luckily, one of the most common gamepad usages is to make single-player experiences more streamlined. Generally, that meant offloading menus and maps to the bottom screen. Beyond the Xenoblade Chronicles X example I already gave, Wind Waker is probably the most prominent example of this. Now, those who have played the GameCube original probably wouldn't gripe too much about having to open the menus to check them, but I personally did find it a pain to open up the menu every once in a while to make sure that my ship was headed in the right direction. Wind Waker HD simplifies all this by just giving players a continuous look at their inventory, map, and game options. It's not so revolutionary a feature that I've had difficulty going back to the GameCube version, but it just makes the game so much more comfortable to experience. And you know, add in the tingle bottles that use the gamepad to send out messages via Pretendo, and there's just a lot of charm and quality of life added to the gamepad features alone in this game. Splatoon is very similar in that regards. Not only because I can send out messages via Pretendo that show up as graffiti during matches, but also because it makes keeping an eye on the map so much easier. In Splatoon 3, looking at the map means tapping a button, having it stop my action to take up the full screen. In the original Splatoon, the map is always available to glance at on the gamepad. I can run headfirst into enemy territory while watching my other teammates' location in real time. Or if I need to get out of the way fast, I can quickly backtrack while I reach to tap a super jump point. Considering how the entire competitive game of Splatoon centers around map control, always having it quickly available makes all the difference. Throughout the variety of games I've played over the years on Wii U, I've never experienced one that used the gamepad for maps and menus and thought it didn't add something positive to the experience. Unfortunately, I've known many folks over the past decade who specifically refer to these types of games that utilize the gamepad for maps and menus as the gamepad not doing much. And honestly, if any of y'all are still in that boat, you're missing out. There are so many action-adventure games I've enjoyed playing that would have been made so much better if I didn't have to continuously pause the game to look at maps and menus. Even playing a game like Arkham City that was ported from the PS3 feels just a bit more immersive, with the gameplay not feeling like it's come to a sudden halt when I mess with the map. Not to mention, having a better speaker in the gamepad than a lot of other controllers helps sell some unique interactions, like when Alfred talks through the headset. The fact that we don't have more dual-screen consoles in games that give us these small quality of life bumps is honestly unfortunate. That's even more true as we consider the final grouping of games I want to highlight, those that use the gamepad for unique gameplay. These types of games are comparatively rarer than the previous category, but they're also not hard to find. Nintendo Land is often pointed at as the quintessential representative of this category. And honestly, if you bought a Wii U for cheap just to play this game, I wouldn't blame you. It's a fun assortment of minigames that still feels great to dig into today, either on your own or with friends. However, there are more titles than Nintendo Land that make quality use of the gamepad. For example, the Wii U's Star Fox games, both Guard and Zero, make solid use of the gamepad in different ways. Guard is a tower defense game that uses the gamepad to swap between 12 different cameras around the base's perimeter to dispatch enemies. As the game ramps up in difficulty, quick reflexes to tap between cameras are needed equally as much as precise camera control. It's a lot more fun than reviews would have you think once the tension ramps up a bit. Meanwhile, Zero is a more traditional Star Fox game made by Platinum Games that treats the gamepad like a full cockpit view, using motion to aim and fire in front of the player. Central to the game is recognizing the right time to glance away from the TV to focus on the gamepad for precision. I've had a blast playing it, and it's one of the rare games I've had trouble properly playing outside original hardware. Then there are those second and third party titles like Wonderful 101, whose entire gameplay loop revolves around drawing symbols on the gamepad to switch fighting forms. Some indoor scenes even swap the main view from the TV to the gamepad for a bit more focused gameplay. Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE uses the gamepad as a way to interact with the main character's smartphone during overworld gameplay, as maps in dungeons, or even as status trackers during fights. Hell, Zombie U, a Wii U launch title, is often held up as one of the best uses of the gamepad due to how it pressures players to look away from gameplay to rearrange their inventory while actively threatened by zombies. I could honestly go all day mentioning games without even getting to how Super Mario Maker offers much cleaner gameplay than on Switch due to it using a stylus without giving up a huge screen. When developers embraced the Wii U gamepad, it often opened up some creative gameplay opportunities that couldn't be found elsewhere. The fact that it's often overlooked feels more a result of its low sales volume than anything. Okay, to wrap all this up, the Wii U gamepad has been used in a variety of different ways by developers. Like all console controllers, not all developers used all features it had to offer. Yet, a surprising amount added enough features that their Wii U ports feel like unique experiences, somewhat different than on other platforms. if they even exist on other platforms. For the games which use the gamepad less, porting them elsewhere has been easy. Pokken Tournament, for example, had a cool local multiplayer feature, but that's about it. Its Switch port feels better to play in general and largely gets around any local awkwardness through an emphasis on online play. Meanwhile, porting a game like Star Fox Guard would mean sacrificing a ton of the streamlined controls and essentially remaking the gameplay from the ground up to fit a single screen device. In both cases, the Wii U offers a different set of experiences which can't be obtained on the other platforms due to the gamepad being, well, what it is. The utility of a second screen combined with the additional provided input of a touchscreen makes any game that uses it just a bit more interesting and open to unique experiences. For those interested in fun, often novel gameplay experiences, I think the death of the Wii U has been grossly exaggerated. Those are my thoughts though. As always, feel free to let me know yours down in the comments. There's definitely a ton more to be said about the Wii U's utility, even outside of its native library. After all, it natively plays 3 systems and is the only officially supported way to play DS games dual screen on a TV. For me, the Wii U's personal library is its highlight, but folks interested in emulators are definitely missing out if they still don't own one. Anyway, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and give it a like to let me know, and then get subscribed for more dual screen gaming videos in the very near future. If you'd like to jump into other videos I've made on the topic, feel free to click the links I hopefully remember to put on the screen. And, well, yeah, that's going to be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Until next time, catch you later.